Hello everybody, I am Jmulls of Jmulls Gaming, and let's look to the future. Final Fantasy XIV Dawntrail is among us, and I have finished the MSQ, so let's theorycraft about where the future of this story could go. And I'm gonna need full spoilers for Dawntrail in this video, so let's get right on into it, shall we? So Dawntrail is way more enclosed than I thought it would be. I thought, 7.0 would end with this massive cliffhanger, or at least have some really obvious plot thread that they could pull on, and there's a few things that they could for the patches, but in terms of long-term storytelling, they really left themselves with a lot of options and a lot of leeway as to where this could go from here. Now, I do think that's intentional. As I said before in a previous video, I think Dawntrail's a test, not only for what plot threads people are interested in, but also just what tones and vibes that people like more from Dawntrail. But I do think there are a few hints. Nothing as obvious as, say, Yotsuyu and Gosetsu washing up on the deserted island at the end of Stormblood, but there's a few things. At the very end, when they had the Warrior of Light looking at the map of the world, and especially Tyrell, there were moments at the end of that section where it had the Warrior of Light, or mainly the camera, focus in on this obscured part of North Tyrell, the northern continent of the New World. We've been to quite a bit of Tyrell, but we haven't been to the far northern part of it. There's a lot that could be done in that location, but if you look to the south of Tyrell, where places like Chile or Argentina would ordinarily lie in this map, it's obscured as well. We see Velagamanda on the map, but we also see this other dragon-like entity around the southern tip of Tyrell. It could mean absolutely nothing, or it could just be hinting at something they may want to delve into in the future. But what plot threads could they really unravel here? Well, this is where it gets a bit interesting, because I still believe that 6.1 to 6.5 is laying the groundwork for the long-term storytelling that they want to do. I think a lot of the story, eventually for this new narrative arc and saga we're in, will revolve around the 13th and the 1st. And it's essentially trying to bring equilibrium to the balance of the ether in those locations. Because Dawntrail, the main thing I'm getting out of it is, with a little bit more understanding, we can absolutely bridge the gap in terms of how we travel to different reflections and shards. What was once a very cumbersome and obscure way to go about doing things can become far more streamlined and usable and feasible. And I think that's largely what Dawntrail set out to do for the lore. Establish this technology and establish this technique so that this can be expanded on in the future. And I think it's obvious and almost blindingly obvious to many people out there, especially those who are really in, deep when it comes to the story of Final Fantasy XIV and predicting its future. Mira City is coming down the pipe. My only question is I don't know when they want to pull the Mira City trigger. Because it's going to have a lot of hype because there's dragons there, and there's dragons involved, and dragons are really cool. Miracidia is probably the location at this point that has the most hype and build-up to it that we just haven't gotten to yet, with Miracidia essentially being the Australia of Final Fantasy XIV, and a lot of build-up in the patches of Endwalker. And it was also one of the locations that was directly called out by Emmett Selk at the end of Endwalker as well. They are clearly building up to Miracidia. The only question was, before it was revealed that 7.0 was the New World, when are they going to actually do it? And I checked this out on stream. If you go back to the Emmett Selk dialogue, largely the locations that he's yapping out go kind of in order to how we actually tackled them in game. I don't think they go one for one, but broadly speaking, they kind of do. And almost after he talked about the New World, he mentions Miracidia. Yeah, Emmett Selk says, the fabled golden cities of the New World, the sacred sites of the forgotten people of the South Sea Isles. Now, we just covered the golden cities of the New World with Dawntrail. The sacred sites of the forgotten people of the South Sea Isles, they were mentioned in Dawntrail, but perhaps they want to take us in a more active fashion to the South Sea Isles, because that has development, that has build-up now, and we have a tie-in with that with Kryl. The only question I have is, do they consider this a wrapped-up storyline with living memory, or is this something they want to pull on and say, okay, we've teased the technological advancements of this people. Maybe there's still some remnants in the South Sea Isles we just haven't gone to yet, because not all the South Sea Isles we've been to. Still largely a mystery. But right after that, Emmett Selk directly mentions Miracidia, the southern continent. Do you know aught of its present state of affairs? I don't see us tackling Mirror City in anything but an entire expansion. I don't see it just being a dungeon that we go to for the vibes. I don't see it just being like a piece of side content, like a new Bosja or whatever. With the amount of hype and build-up Mirror City has had, it's obvious to me that it's going to be an expansion, and they could perhaps tie in the South Sea Isles to it. It really depends. I think they will eventually have us go shard hopping. Like, we did that a little bit with Dawntrail, but I think eventually we will just go and study these other reflections in their entirety at some point down the line. The question for me is, do they want Mirror City to be like the next step on this journey to go to these shards? Or will Mirror City be essentially the culmination of all that we're going to do? Is it the next act or the final act? That's just what I can't figure out. And I know Dawntrail is really controversial for a lot of people, and I understand that because in terms of execution, I think it could have been better. Way better. It was lacking in many regards. However, the lore for Final Fantasy XIV can easily be explored in the future in very interesting ways. There's so many parts of the world that we are also in, just Heidelin, that we haven't really explored. And I think the biggest takeaway for me out of Dawntrail is I think Dawntrail is largely a self-contained narrative, and I don't particularly think too many things will follow or get, built upon after Dawntrail's, patches. In any, meaningful regard, right? I don't see us going back to Solution 9 in a meaningful capacity like we've been doing with Charlian. I just don't see that particularly happening. What I think Dawntrail was supposed to do was introduce this technology to allow us to more easily navigate, but also transfer things between various shards and reflections. I don't particularly see us, exploring more of the first or the 13th, but I think a lot of the actions and our own motivating principles in the future will involve trying to aid those two locations. 6.1 to 6.5, the patches of Endwalker, to me, scream as we are laying the groundwork and development for this long-term story. We're gonna get a lot of the grunt work and busy work of this world building out of the way now, so that when we reintroduce these characters like Zero and Golbez, and these concepts like the 13th and the Void Scent, and Umbral and Astral, when we reintroduce these concepts down the line, we can just get right into the swing of things. It's a lot of putting pieces on the proverbial game board so that we can just play the game when we actually start it. It's entirely possible that we explore the northern part of Jacques Terral or the southern part of Yolk Terral in the patches through the dungeons, because we kind of did this again back in Stormblood with places like the Burn. The Burn could have easily been a zone that they really explored, but they relegated it to a dungeon, which is fine. But also when it comes to overall zone design, and what I hope that we do more of in the future, is I hope we do get some more cold weather environments. Yeah, we had Gollibald, but the vast majority of places we've been to over the last few expansions have been really warm weather environments, and I would just like to see some snow, in places that aren't just essentially a flat plain with a ruined city in it. And with how gorgeous Dawntrail has been overall in terms of zone design, I'm just thinking about what the northern part of Jacques Terral, the southern part of Yolk Terral could really look like, and yeah, that could be really cool. You also have the rest of Hingashi. We've been to Kugane, don't get me wrong, but there's a shocking amount of detail for the rest of Hingashi that we just have never been to, because it's essentially closed off. If they want to open that up one day, that could easily be another expansion. But this is the interesting thing with a post-Dawntrail 7.0 world and a pre-7.1 world, because I imagine we'll get a lot more clarity in the patches as to where possibly 8.0 will go, but right now, Dawntrail wrapped itself up with a bow, pretty much. We have that Fiend Crown. This Fiend Crown is interesting, because that could mean anything. It could be activating something, could be opening something up for us to explore in the patches. I don't think the disease that plagued the Yakhoi when they got to Jacques Terral was ever really explored or explained. They could just say, hey, they weren't used to, the natural bacteria of Jacques Terral or whatever, and got sick because of that. They could just write it off like that, or have it be a more nefarious agent was afoot, and we explore the reason that happened in the patches, or possibly even down the line. That's the thing with Dawntrail. There's a lot of little small segments like this. They could easily just say, yeah, well, we don't really need to explore it. It kind of got wrapped up. Or they could say, yeah, but there's way more to this. Let's really delve into the weeds. They could easily do that. There's one last angle that they could play on, and that is the idea of the battling gods, and the story that was introduced rather early into Dawntrail that they didn't really ever explore, and they kind of even wrote it off in the story that, oh, it could just be a misinterpretation of what happened between Hydaelyn and Zodiac, that the reason Tyrell is split into two different continents is because there are two gods that battled it out to separate the continents, and the continents separated in that clash. They said that it sounded a lot like the Hydaelyn Zodiac conflict, and that could be just what it is, that it's this ancient legend of a misinterpretation of what actually happened, 100%. They could also go the route of just say, there are these two gods in the new world, maybe we could address them down the line, maybe in the patches of Dawntrail, because we have this giant question mark about what we're actually going to tackle in the patches. We have this giant question mark. I can't imagine we're just gonna go to the places we've already been to and just say, hey, how you guys doing? You got to imagine they have some story at least planned out that they want to cover here. My other main question is just, how is the patch structure going to play out? Are we going to go back to the point 3 being the big finale wrap-up, and then point 4, point 5 serving as prelude to the next expansion? Or are we going to do what we did back in Endwalker, where the patches are kind of their own separate little mini-narrative going on, and then we move into the new expansion? Personally, I hope they go back to the point 3 being a conclusion, and then point 4, point 5 being prelude, because I think the flow and pacing of that structure works better for Final Fantasy XIV, at least from past experience. But let's assume they do that structure. What will be the story for point 1, point 2, point 3? I think the Sphene Crown thing is the easy layup here. We just don't know what that entails or what it could represent, if it represents anything at all. To me, it looked like it was activating, and someone in one of my stream chats mentioned, hey, this does kind of look like those devices that the Alexandrians had that regulated memory, the regulators. Possibly something to do with that, but people still remember Queen Sphene. To me, it kind of felt and looked like a kill switch, where if something happened to this version of Sphene, if she managed to die, there was some backup plan that was going to be enabled and enacted. So if we're going to go back to that 3-patch structure for the epilogue of Dawntrail, whatever that kill switch could be, in my opinion, would be the play to cover there. And then assuming 8.0 is Meracidia, because if we're going to go after what Emmett Silk said, we could do South Sea Isles properly, and Meracidia in 8.0. And with them actively bringing back Vritra into the story and establishing a relationship between Tyrell and Ratadhan, and with Ratadhan's proximity to the South Sea Isles and Meracidia, I think this may be the play they're going for, and these are the pieces they're putting on the board to really play with. That's my way of thinking. I'm not saying it with 100% certainty, because I think this story can truly go in pretty much any direction right now, but if I were to make a bet, this would be mine. That 7.1 to 7.3 plays on the idea that the Sphene Crown acts as a kill switch, or death switch, whatever you want to call it. We have to contend with that and wrap up the story of Tuliolol mostly there. Maybe we explore the northern parts of Jacques Tyrell and the southern parts of Jacques Tyrell in dungeons, or maybe they save that for a future expansion. But then I think 7.4, 7.5 will play on something that will drive us to the South Sea Isles and to Meracidia, possibly with Kryl in tow, because I think she's going to be a major character in this new overall character arc. I like Kryl, I'm a fan of her character, so I wouldn't mind that. I think this is the play they're going for, because it makes sense with them introducing these concepts and really expanding on them in Dawntrail, and it also fits with what Emmett Silk alluded to. So yeah, that's what I think is going to happen, and also what I kind of want to have happen. I don't see characters like Wu Klamat following us much into the future. I've stated multiple times before, I think she's going to fulfill the role of, say, like Amarek when we go to Ishgard, where if we happen to go there or be there for whatever reason, we say, hey, how you doing? Cool, see you again in like another 5 years. I don't see her being a main character going down the line. I don't see her following us to Meracidia in the South Sea Isles for whatever reason. I think the big development they wanted to get in with Dawntrail was to develop the location of the new world, but also Kryl and her parents, while also introducing new ways for us to travel to various shards, but also bring things with us in a more non-roundabout way, let's say. So yeah, those are my thoughts and my predictions. Let me know what you think. Let me know your own personal theories and where you think the story could go from here. I'd love to hear your thoughts and hear your opinions and hear your perspectives. Stay safe, have a great day. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you like the video or want to see more content. I know I would appreciate it. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again.